Hi everyone, this is William from the Headphone Experience, and I'm here tonight with my first impressions of the HeadAmp GS-X Mini. This amp is made in the USA and it currently sells for $17.95. Basically, this is a smaller and lighter version of HeadAmp's GS-X Mark II. This is a balanced design, and it is also converts the single-ended inputs into balance. So no matter what input you're using, you still have a balanced output. This amp is available in, I believe, 7 different colors, including the blue you see here. It comes stock with an Alps RK27 potentiometer for your volume control, but there is an optional resistor ladder volume control that is available for $200 extra, and this particular model does have the optional resistor ladder volume control. This unit weighs in at about 5 pounds 7 ounces. And the dimensions are 11.5 inches wide, about 10.5 inches deep, which includes the volume control sticking out the front and your outputs on the back. And it's about 2 inches tall. This has 2 inputs, which would be your single-ended RCA inputs and your 3-pin XLR balanced inputs. It has 2 pre-outs, which would be, once again, RCA single-ended and 3-pin XLR balanced outputs, and it has 2 headphone outputs, which would be your standard 1/4 inch single-ended and your 4-pin balanced XLR. On the front you have the power switch. You have your single-ended output, your balanced output, your volume control, your gain control, your preamp on or off switch, and your input to switch between your XLR balanced and your RCA single-ended inputs. On the rear, you have your These will be your balanced inputs, your single-ended inputs, your balanced pre-outs, your single-ended pre-outs, and then you have your power, or your 120 volt AC power input here. As far as the equipment I used doing my evaluation of this amp, started out with a Cambridge Audio 540C CD player used as a transport only, using a digital signal out of that into the benchmark media DAC1, and then my digital signal from there to this amp. And as far as headphones, I used a wide variety of headphones, and I've had this for a couple of weeks, and I've not only used the 3 Spiritrino headphones that I've been doing my first impressions on this week, but also mostly used the Kennerton's Roar, which is probably my most revealing headphone to evaluate this. And so far my opinions on the sound, and I've done a little bit of comparing this to what has been my reference amp for a while, the Audio GD Master 9, and I would say that the tone balance is just dead on neutral with this. There's no coloration at all in the sound. I would say the clarity, the resolution, the detail are all absolutely outstanding. They're as clean and clear as anything I've heard to this day. I would say this amp is just about analytical. I mean, it's going to pull out every detail in your recording, but yet it's smooth and never sounds harsh. I did test this as far as the noise floor, and the way I do that with my amp reviews is my most sensitive headphone is the Sony MDR-V700, which is about a 20-year-old DJ headphone, and extremely efficient. And if there's a noise floor in a headphone amp, that headphone will reveal it. And so what I did is I tried this amp both in the low gain mode and the high gain mode. And in low gain, I cannot, even with the volume knob completely maxed out, I cannot pick up any background noise at all. Nothing, absolutely nothing. Not a hiss, nothing at all. In the high gain mode, I'm at about 5 o'clock on the volume knob before I pick up even the slightest hiss, and even with the volume knob completely maxed, it's barely audible. And I mean, that's in high gain and the volume knob all the way up. And I did want to point something out that's a little bit unique about this amp, is that most amps, your volume knob starts at about 7 o'clock and it goes around to about 5 o'clock. Well, this amp here, and each of these marks is basically one increment on the resistor ladder volume control. But this volume knob doesn't stop at 5 o'clock. It goes all the way beyond 6 o'clock, almost back to the 7 o'clock position. It makes almost a 360-degree revolution. So that was a little bit unique, but even with it all the way in high gain, I could barely pick up the slightest hiss, which makes this possibly the quietest amp I've ever heard. Up to this point, it was always the benchmark HPA2, which is built into the benchmark decks that include the amp in them. And so far, that has been the quietest amp I've ever tested as far as background noise, and this one is just as quiet, or possibly even more so. What I did want to, I did want to mention that the resistor ladder volume control on this, and this is the third amp that I've reviewed that uses a resistor ladder, and this is probably the smoothest of the three as far as not cutting in and out. Usually a resistor ladder volume control, when you hit in between each of the steps, the volume cuts out either in one channel or both channels, and it doesn't seem to do that with this one, so it's real smooth. And I wanted to talk about the gain and the gain switch and the power of this, because I tested it with several different headphones. And basically, if you're using the single-ended output, which usually has half the voltage of the balanced output on a balanced amp, and therefore 1/4 the wattage, well, using the single-ended output, low gain is ideal for IEMs or super efficient headphones. And then the high gain would be good for some of, medium efficiency headphones. But I did test this with the headphone that I have that's the hardest to drive, and that would be the Hi-Fi-Man HE560. And with the 560 is kind of a unique headphone, because even if an amp will play it loud enough, if it's not getting enough power, and probably by power I mean current, it sounds very thin. It loses all its dynamics and it loses all the weight to the bass. So from the single-ended output, I couldn't even get up to a reasonable volume level with the volume knob maxed out all the way in low gain. But in high gain, it would play reasonably loud. It was loud enough, but it definitely lacked dynamics and weight to the bass. So I would say if you have a hard to drive headphone, such as the HE560, you're definitely going to want to use the balanced output on this amp, because you're, twice the voltage and 4 times the wattage. So anyway, I tested that same headphone with the balanced output, and in the low gain mode, it still came up a little short. The headphone would play loud enough, but it definitely lacked dynamics and weight to the bass. But when I switched over to the high gain mode, this amp did a very good job with the HE560. So once again, if you're going to use a hard to drive planar magnetic type of headphone, and that's the hardest to drive that I've had, you're definitely going to want to use a balanced cable and the balanced output with this amp. So basically overall, you know, and this is just my first impressions. I intend to come back in a couple weeks with a full review, get a lot deeper into the sound, do some comparison of this amp to some other amps, and excuse me a second. Talk a little bit about what types of music I'm using and all that, because I know that affects, you know, my review. My review isn't very credible if I don't discuss what types of music I'm using. So anyway, right now my first impressions, my overall impression of this amp is it's small, it's light, it's ideal for a desktop amp, you know, if you're limited on space. It has exceptional clarity and detail. It has an exceptionally low noise floor, so it's very versatile. You can use it with anything from the most sensitive IEMs to pretty hard to drive headphones. It's got enough power to do that. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up now. I'll be back in a couple of weeks with a full review. And once again, this is William from the Headphone Experience. If this video has helped you, please give me a thumbs up. If please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you are all welcome to join us over at the Headphone Experience on Facebook. Thank you.